Hey everybody, welcome back to Gun Totin' Minnesotan. My name is Andrew, and what I have for you here is a Discovery Optics 5-25. This is their Gen 2 of the ED PRS series. It is a side focus, has illumination, and exposed turrets. As you can see here, 56mm objective, comes with these flip caps, and I actually have my personal version, which is a little bit older version. It's still a Gen 2, but it retains some of the initial design features. Like this one has a slotted screw on top to release that, and on the side with the traditional Torx release on the windage. And then you can see on the throw lever here, it has more of a kind of a standard cattail throw lever. This is a good scope, and this is the one that I did the abuse test on. If you didn't watch that, you need to go back and watch that. But I beat this thing, near death, but it didn't die on me. It still tracks well, it's reliable. I did everything from putting it on strong piston guns to putting on magnums, and then drop tests where I just straight up was dropping rifles, like 17, 18-pound rifles with the scope, knocking them over, dropping them on the ground from about chest, or was it waist height, about waist height, and this optic held up. It's a really great optic for robustness, and it's a pretty good deal overall. But I know that not everybody shoots mills. I shoot mills. That's almost exclusively what I'll touch. It's just mills. It's because of competition. It's because of my spotter crews. When I go out places, that's what we shoot. But I know a lot of people, according to market research, they still like MOA. And I do see some MOA at competitions from time to time. And this is the same optic, except for it's got some of the really neat updates on it. I want to tell you about it. So the new 5-25s have an easier to reset turret. You notice that I didn't need a tool for that. If I did lock it down and I got too tight, I actually could put a coin into that. But you can see these are quarter MOA turrets. And just with finger tension, I can slide it off and slip the scales. And you still get your big oversized turrets with really nice numerical patterns on there. Let me get it to focus. They're very bold. And you have right and left marked on there. You have that nice grip texture and pattern, and some O-rings inside of here. This is a pretty large size turret, and I can see those around everything. If I had bigger scope rings or whatever, I'm actually using a Discovery one-piece mount right now. This is a 1.5-inch single-piece mount. But you notice that to reset that zero, if you wanted to run out and reset stuff, I do all the time. I have to re-zero things almost every single week because I move things around a lot for my channel. And I really, really appreciate the new technology. I've recommended to Discovery, you should go ahead and throw that on as much as you can moving forward, because I think it's phenomenal and it works really great on this new MOA model, which they also have a new mill model with those as well. I believe that's already hit the market. If not, it will soon. The 6-36 is also running these, which I've recently done reviews on. If you haven't seen anything with the 6-36, that's Discovery's new, bigger optic, and it's a very impressive optic. I also suggest check that one out. This is probably their flagship model in a lot of ways, but the 6-36 I think is going to compete with that because it brings a lot to the table. So the top is also removable by just using my fingers. And one thing you're going to find underneath, because this is the side, the top has the zero stop. And so on top there is one stainless steel disc up here. I'm going to zoom in just for a second. All right. So you see there's a stainless steel disc on top. Let me rotate that around. And you can see that there's a single Torx. And so to reset your zero, you're going to make sure this interferes with this little knob on top. Maybe you can see that a little better if I turn it sideways. That's what they need to interfere with. I'm sure you're familiar with design, so I'm not going to insult your intelligence. But one thing that I think is smart about this design is instead of having 3 pieces that you have to loosen up going around, or sometimes even 4, I've seen as much as 5 on some designs, you just have one, and you have some awesome teeth and pretty decent engagement on top. So I think that design is more desirable than what I'm seeing on a lot of other scopes out there. And again, this one's going to be a pretty reasonable price. Then when it's time to flip this up, I do have a witness mark. If I can turn this around, I've got witness marks. I drop it into that slot. There is an O-ring around the top, and I could just use finger tension to bring that down. If I overdo it and it gets too tight or have some sort of weather effect where it's sealing up too tight, again, I can just plop a coin in there and give it a twist or use the included tools. If you're looking for a good mount, I suggest the rings from Discovery to complement these. As long as you listen to the torque specs and you're careful about that. I have some of the 2-piece rings here, and they've done just fine for me, but I do listen to the torque specs, and I'm careful about that. Otherwise, you will strip them out, and I don't have that issue because I'm pretty light on that. And then these as well, they have numerical indicators on the side for a pattern to go back and forth, so you kind of make sure it's even and then level, of course, on top of that. One other accessory, I don't have it right here with me, that you might want to consider if you're looking at getting into some Discovery products, or you have a 34mm tube, 30mm tube optic, even down to a 1-inch, is they now have bubble levels that they're selling. And I'll have links for all this in the comments. Check out the comments if you want to see more about that. But these are interesting. I like the reticles in them, even though I'm not an MOA guy. I shot the 6-36 MOA version a while ago, some 308 out past, I think it was past 600 yards that particular day. And I've had some fun comparing the 5-25 and the 6-36 since I had them both off rifles for a while. I put them on tripods like this right next to each other so I can look in the same light at the same time. And I'm looking at the edges of the glass, I'm looking at the center of the glass, and the sweet spot in this glass, even when I'm dialing out a ways, let me tighten this down, even when I'm dialing out a ways, and there's, about a little over 32 mils of usable range. Technically, I would say it's like 31, 32 is reasonable to use. Even when I dial out there, the sweet spot is still really nice. And the edges of the glass are not too bad. The reticle makes sense to me because it doesn't extend down into the extreme ends. And so I like the reticle that they went with for this. It's fine enough. Most people are really going to get into it because it's Christmas tree. And, you have at least that 40 MOA. If you're going with an MOA model, you have at least 40 MOA. And then there is kind of a chevron with some transparency. You can actually see through it, which is, again, a smart design because it doesn't obstruct your target. And then you go down to a thick bar. I find that these scopes on 5 power are usable. The eye box is reasonable. It's not too, fishbowl-y or anything on 5 power. And then on 25 power, let me just move it up. This one has this has the improved newer throw lever, which has 2 securing anchors. I just think it's a better idea. Okay, let's move up to 25 power. And then on 25 power, although the eye box does get more touchy, head position matters more and all that kind of thing, which is pretty normal. The reticle makes a lot of sense. It's easy to use, and I think they did a good job going with this reticle. It feels very much so like some of the Z-Comp reticles. If you've used those, it feels similar in the values, in the size, and essentially it feels very, very similar to the Z-Comp. So if I back off just a little bit, image quality is still pretty stabilized. I think the sweet spot for this scope optically is you can use most of the range of travel, and if you're between like 13 and 19 power, it's really ideal, and it gets a little bit more touchy when you go beyond that, over and above. But most of the time in PRS, which is what this is geared towards, you're not going to be that high very often unless you're shooting very small targets or you're spotting for a friend. A couple more things I like about these is tends to be a little bit heavy, and I like throwing these on PRS or NRL 22 guns because I already want them heavy. I want as much weight as I can usually, so I don't mind the extra weight. I think going longer means they didn't compromise a couple different things. It would have been harder to have better depth of field if they went shorter. So they're just trying to get the best of what they can at a certain price point. And these are pretty price efficient. They've come a long ways. If you don't know anything about the current Discovery brand, they've come a really long ways, even 3 or 4 years ago. Their products and their optics were not as close to competitive as what they are right now. These optics are fairly competitive, and I do find that there's features on these that do blow some of the other competitors out of the water at the price point. So I think they're doing a really good job. I don't know how they achieve the prices that they do at times because they do throw in a lot. Like I said, you're going to get sunshades, flip caps, get exposed turrets, You get some of the new modern features on these updated models, throw lever, and there's usually just quite a few things in the package. So I find that they're a pretty good deal. Decent reticles. The turrets do track reliably and return to zero reliably, which is very important. There's a lot of internal elevation available and windage available. And I find that, they typically, sorry about that, I was getting interrupted. Anyways, I find that they have a diversity of products. So whether you're into air gun, center fire, rim fire, they have a lot of different products. So if this isn't exactly what you're looking for and you're looking for something smaller, LPVO, or cheaper, like you need more of a Springer optic, although these are Springer rated, believe it or not, they do have quite a bit in that range. And like I said, they now have the 6-36. So I just want to throw something out there, a little plug for Discovery Optics. They're kind of interesting. I like to keep them around. I have some of these on my backup rifles for PRS. And so if my core rifle goes down, I will take these out. And believe it or not, my highest score to date at a match was with using a Discovery 5-25. In fact, it was this one right here.